Welcome, everybody, to the Headless Giant show. I have my friend Matt Olmsted or Onstead. I keep messing that up. I don't know why I do that. But he is a magician, he is a mystic, he is a poet. And I thought I'd bring him on to talk with you a little bit about his magical practice. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Matt.
Hello, everybody. I'm certainly honored to be here. There have been a lot of heavies on this show, and I do not consider myself one of them. But I do appreciate the capabilities that magical practice and theory do make available for people. And so I do spaces on X occasionally, and I do write about this subject, and I do wish to expound on the virtues of being self aware and self actuated. So I believe that the practice of magic and the theories of magic and the understanding of those principles can free a person from the world of glamour and make them realize of themselves that they are a living universe that is capable of anything. And then if they if they fulfill that purpose, then they become part of a grander thing. They become intrinsically involved in the existence in which they are and become altruistic in the grander and most perfect sense. I hope I articulated that properly.
It sounds like your practices have led to a greater sense of harmony within the world within and the world without. And so I'd like to know a little bit about how you got there, the books you've read, the research you've done, and some of the magic you've done.
Mhm. Okay. Well, in my youth, I had experiences of. Uh, I personally do not use the term supernatural. I believe that everything is just nature and its extensions. So there is no super nature. There's just nature, and it's there, and its variations, and then of course our comprehension of that. If it falls outside of the person's normal comprehension, then people call it supernatural. But I don't think there is a supernature. I just think there's nature and its extensions. And we can either integrate, repel, flee, or become neutral, right? Like Gurdjieff says, there's force, there is action, reaction, and then neutrality, right? There's those three states, and those are really the governing things of the universe. If like let's just say in more modern times, gravity is no longer a force, it's an effect, right? We've changed that, right? We've changed that because we can't define gravity as a force. We can define it as an effect, but it isn't a force. It's just an effect. So I think the same thing can happen in a person's personal understanding of themselves as they go forward in the exploration of themselves. So I came about this because I had experiences, and I didn't live in an environment. I lived in a kind of a Protestant Catholic sort of environment, okay? And it was rural. There weren't a lot of bookstores. There weren't a lot of places that I could go to find answers to the questions that were obviously popping up because I didn't have tutelage. I didn't have any of those things. The culture I lived in was reticent to even address the things that I was finding common experience in at all. However, in my mom's side of the family, these things were kind of old hat, as it were, but it was more folky. my mom's side of the family, they were immigrant workers that came from Ireland and Scotland and whatnot, and then from the Cherokee Nation. My father's side was uh, basically Vikings. So I came from a lot of warrior class, and I spent a lot of my youth severely and adamantly fighting sobriety, which I won that battle very often, but I lost the battle of personal growth and development because of it. Um, so the basis of my quest was for answers, right? I needed answers to the fact that I was an odd thumb. I was a strange standout, and there were things that I knew and trying to understand or access reason for, and they weren't available to me. And not until I was able to move out and go out on my own and find a more, well, let's just say the year before I graduated high school, there was available to me um, a book and some readings on Aleister Crowley. Okay. And this is 1986, 87, 87. In 1987, I read a sentence that changed everything for me. Actually, there was a couple. One was that every act of will is a magical act. Every act of will is a magical act. And the other one, which was the follow up, is to do what thou wilt will be the whole of the law. Now, those are from separate books, but in the reading that I had or the availability of it, I thought, okay, so it opened up a world of possibility for me. Okay, because I was never a messianic follower. I did not believe in a Messiah. And I still do not. I believe that for people as a whole to place their own salvation into another alleviates the responsibility of saving themselves. And also the responsibility of their own damnation. In other words, I'm not a fatalist per se. I don't actually believe that everything is structured to be fait accompli. I think that it's half made, and then we have the ability to navigate and make decisions that will finalize or restrict our next decision, right? And so, as I started to read of Crowley, then I also got into Eliphas Levi, and I did get into the Kabbalistic thing a little bit. I got into that very easily because it was based on 10, right? The 10 concept. Now, basis of 10 is easy, right? We got it right here. Here we have it. Basis of 10. We do base 10 things all the time. Metric system is based on 10, but so it was easy to for me to segue. And in fact, I found intuitively that Kabbalistic teachings, those things made a lot of sense to me. But I read them from outsiders. I didn't read them from the Hasidic point of view. I read them from the occultic point of view, which is a little bit different, and it derivates. And when I understood the system, then I got to a point where I understood that there's a world of formation, and then and it breaks down systematically and harmonically, right? Because I also studied Pythagoras, and I I got into all of the philosophies, basically. I went from Greek to Native American, Black Elk Speaks. And then I started to see there was these mores, these things that overlaid each other, and they had synchronicities, right? There's a pattern language here, right? And in this pattern language, it plays out through history. It has strange variations based upon the technological advances of the societies that are utilizing them. But ultimately, the end goal has a mathematical construct that can be recognized, internalized, and then found meaning. So when I started studying magic and occult things, I was on a quest for answers, right? I wanted answers. And I think that's one of the greatest and most terrible addictions in modern society is the answer. And people say, I have the answer. I have the answer. I'm getting an answer. And the answer does not give you meaning, right? That is the quest. The quest is to get your information and give it meaning, because you will never have comprehension if you do not have both the information and what it actually means to you. An answer is just an answer. Like Einstein said, do not concern yourself with the person that has all the answers. Rather, align yourself with the person who asks the important questions. So,
Matt, we got breaking news. Joseph Campbell just shot up through his grave to give you a big thumbs up.
oh my God. Well, I was expecting another finger, but I'm happy to hear the news. So yeah, that also brings me to another thing that I studied, which was Jung, and I studied Joseph Campbell too. The Hero's Journey, The Power of Myth, were crucial for me to formulate a postulate. Let's just call it that, right? I had questions, and for me, in fact, you did ask me for some poetry, so as I speak, I will try to dig that up. The quest for meaning and not answers is what changed for me, right? Because you can have answers all day. 2 + 2 is 4, but what is 4, right?
We got all the
Math
answers
is
right
a
here.
wonderful thing. Yeah, right. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
happened to us?
The great irony of that is the smartphone is not making us smarter, does it? And that's just it. We are content with answers, but not meaning. And for me, when I began my journey of gathering knowledge or what have you, I was analog. I was struggling through bookstores, weird ass bookstores that all the weirdos went to. The first place that I started compiling books like this. Actually, I have this on my work desk, and I met this man, David Allen Hughes. I met him in 1992. He did a Herculean compendium of magical languages, right? He was fundamental in my quest for quote unquote answers, but then ultimately, like training, let's say, and this is something that magical societies do. They train people, right? They train them. And the reason that they train them is the same way, and I just speak a lot in metaphor and parable and whatnot, but imagine that magical system is like a person who wants to give themselves the illusion of security by buying a gun. They buy it when they're young, before they're married. And they train themselves on how to use that gun, and they use it very well. And they become an expert marksman, and they don't tell anybody that, right? And then they have a son one day, and the guy shows him how to properly use and safely operate a gun. And the son understands the system and knows why the gun exists and all of that. And so he shows him where he keeps his awesome gun, and he's an expert marksman, but nobody really knows that. And he keeps a lock in the key or in the trigger. Right? He has a trigger lock for it, and it's always safe. And then one day, after practice, he's tired and he lays the gun there. He doesn't put the trigger lock in. And the son, who understands the proper use of the gun and understands the training, understands all that, has a friend come over. And the friend finds the gun. And the gun is loaded, as it is for a person who wants to utilize the gun properly. But he doesn't have the training. He doesn't have the understanding and the danger of the gun. Well, then you read about that the next day. The son, who had the training and the understanding and all that, exposed the person who didn't. The person who didn't picks up the gun, and the gun goes off intermittently or intentionally or whatever, because they didn't have the proper training, the understanding, or the respect of what it does and how it operates. And that is why secret societies do their secrets, because they don't want loaded guns given to freaking monkeys all the time. You don't give a starter gun to a monkey, because what's going to happen? What does it? And for me, when I began my journey into this, I was the monkey with the starter gun. I thought I was pretty smart. To be perfectly honest, maybe I was. But what I wasn't was practice. What I wasn't was wise. What I wasn't was patient or understanding or prudent. And so when I talk about magic and things I've done, I always talk about my mistakes. I don't talk about my success. I talk about my mistakes, because I don't want people to do the wrong thing. The wrong thing hurts other people, and it hurts you, but you're responsible for your own shit, dude. You are. You push your karma into the world, and it comes back, and it's reflected upon you, and that's it. But when the grander circle of your karma hits the pond, and there are people in the tertiary and they suffer, is greater than you. And if you want to break the paradigm, and you want to go out there and create greater, then you don't want the reflection to be back negative or destructive.
Yeah, you really don't. I think the whole Sorcerer's Apprentice scenario really does come into play, especially on these different cultural levels where we see these different groups sort of engaging in this facile combat of trying to get people's attention and trying to rip their heads in different directions, And it's
Yep.
like you see these different magical systems of thinking coming into conflict with one another.
And that's the great that is for me. When I started looking into all of the various things, and I will tell you about my first great mistake. Okay, this was in 1994, and I looked into both the Golden Dawn and the Rosicrucian use of the Tatwas. Okay, and in the Tatwas, what you have is basically you have ether, right? If you go in line, you go from ether to which it's ether, air, fire, water, earth, right?
Keep going, Matt. I'll be right back.
Okay, so ether, air, fire, water, earth, and this comes to the swara understanding that the culmination of these 5 points. By the way, five is an important thing here. You have the elements and the fifth element, which is spirit, ether, whatever, this premium mobile, this thing that comes before the ether, which in Hellenistic terms is the logos. You have this premium mobile, let's call it the first mover, and then it goes through the ether, and then it becomes in this order: air, fire, water, earth, in both the Rosicrucian and the Golden Dawn, right? And this is thelemic magic as they define it. Okay, so I decided, because of my studies on Kabbalah, that I would begin with Earth, because I wanted to start from the Malkut and I wanted to work my way up through the tree, right? Through the tree of knowledge. And so my Swara cycle, my quest for understanding. But the thing is that I didn't research it enough, and I didn't read the caveats that they put in there, and I didn't pick my time of day right, and I didn't do any of the shit that they told me I was supposed to do. I was pretty well lit up half the time, just young and drunk and celibate, by the way, to try to quest my way and find these answers or whatever. And so I went through the Prithvi, right? I went through the earth. I tried to open up the earth, which I did. I opened the earth door of the Tawas, and I did it. I put up my protection sphere, right? I put the protection sphere up, and I protected myself very well, like I thought I should. But I didn't. I didn't put a lock on my door. I just opened a fucking door like an idiot. I didn't do. I didn't study enough. The plain and simple fact is that I did not investigate deeply enough. I did not ingrain the knowledge deeply enough. And I was fine. I had a tone, the door opened, I had an experience, and nothing for me specifically happened. I lived in a little bungalow in Venice that was built in the 20s, when there used to be an airstrip before the canals were built in Southern California. And the bungalows I lived in used to be reserved for female entrepreneurs. And people would land there and experience evenings with these entrepreneurs and whatnot. But it turns out the one I lived in that had a build on that happened after that, where I lived, she was taken from her life by a person. She was basically murdered and stuffed under the building. And when I opened the earth tawa and I protected myself, she came through it because I opened it. Because these tawas, if you do study these tawas in the Rosicrucian and the Thelemic, they are quasi. They interact with each other during certain times of day. So you will have. There are very many derivations. There are 4 different ones plus a fifth, and the fifth one is kind of like an open space. And when I did mine, I wasn't aware of the other thing. I just thought I was trying to understand earth element better so that I could read the I Ching. That was my goal. I wanted to do earth divination. And, various divinations have assignments to element, like the tarot is air. Then you have Nostradamus did his water divination, right? But really, As I understand it, he was using a black mirror at that point, but that's more advanced. But the basic part is that I didn't really know what I was doing. And what I ended up doing is I took the fragmented psychology based, trauma driven, dead person that was stuffed under my bungalow and released them on my roommate. I was protected. I did all the things that I thought I needed to do. And that wasn't what I needed to do. What I needed to do was put a block on the door so that I could go in or look in and not have things come out. But I wasn't aware of that, right? Because I was young and impetuous and not learned enough. I didn't have the experience, right? So what I try to tell in my tales are caveats. I don't, to do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law is absolutely true. But what do you really want? Do you just want to be self-serving in this world? Are you truly just so self-motivated that you will sow chaos in the world and reap the pain? Because that is, in the end, you will reap pain. And I didn't even understand that until after it all ended. The things that happened in that bungalow after I did that, and they weren't happening to me, although I did witness certain things, like the faucets turning on and the radios and televisions and all this crazy stuff started happening after I did that. What I did, I got exactly what I wanted. But the other people, the tertiary people, they didn't ask for it. They had no idea what was happening to them. And I caused damage because of my hubris. I had hubris. I did it because I wanted to understand. I wasn't doing it just because, okay? I wasn't Cagliostro here, right? I wasn't just trying to do wonders. I was struggling to understand. I was questing for answers, but yet I didn't yet know that I was also questing for meaning. And when you quest for answers but no meaning, you're going to make blunders, right? And I did. I made a terrible error, and it caused a good friend of mine to suffer, and I did not. I protected myself. I put my spear up. I did all the things that I'd read and trained or whatever. And that is the dangerous road of a Lobo magician, because they're not doing things in what an order would do or a society would do. But in the same token, the opposite side of the token, I did not want to be adhered to a system that I didn't trust, and I didn't trust him.
I think Nick would probably disagree with you there. I don't know if he's still in the chat, but yeah,
Mm.
they were doing all sorts of stuff that they weren't putting up blocks for, and crazy sort of experiments as well. So it's the OTO. I mean, that's what they do. I pulled up here. I have the complete Golden Dawn system of magic, and I have the Totans here. I thought I'd pull these out, give you a memory jogging. Yeah, so you've got Akasha, Ether, Vayu, Aerial Principle, Tejas, the principle of light and heat, Appas, Watery Principle, and Prithiveri, the Earth
Mhm.
Prithvi. Yeah, and so yeah, they go through the whole thing here in this book. Was there any other supplemental tools that you used other than Golden Dawn stuff?
No, I didn't make the implement myself. I made my own card. I made a yellow. In the Prithvi, it's a yellow square. Now, keep in mind that what you're going through is not a yellow square in both. Well, this is more in the. I use more the Rosicrucian than the Golden Dawn. You use under light. You stare at the square, right? And you stare at it without moving your eyes, because you want to imprint upon your eye the square. Then you close your eye And in that color, that is your door. That's your door, because you have it not in your eye and it's not reflected, it's in you, right? Because you're opening a door within you to a grander world. That is how I did that. And that's how I comprehended it. And that's the way I did it. I did it. I did that.
This is what they
That was,
use in Anaki and Magic as well. They use the flashing
yeah.
colors, the
Hmm.
colors
Yep,
that are
that's true.
across from each other on the thing. Yeah. So what
That's
you're
right.
doing there is you're creating that imprint and then using that imprint sort of like a portal.
Sure. I mean, ultimately, these things we build, these sanctifications and all of that stuff, these are just external things that eventually a person that does these things over time will internalize and not need anymore. It's not needed. None of it really is. I mean, if you read advanced people, let's say Gurdjieff, for instance, none of that stuff is needed. To find awareness in the moment and unlock the very moment that you're in, all things are there. All potentials, all choices, the greatest amount of potential and energy is in the moment that you're in and nowhere else. Everything else is either a memory or a fascination or an examination or a postulate. But right now, your choice is to speak or not speak, move or not move. And those movements and speeches and those things that we do, those will limit or open our potentials, right?
The half made moment, right?
Mm.
Every moment is half
Yeah,
made.
and that's what the Buddha says too. Bread, the fate or the existence is the loaf of bread, right? If you rise it too high, it will not bake properly. If you cook it too short, it's just this perfect thing. And the moment is that. I mean, everybody wakes up with a perfect day. And then based on our decisions going forward, that is what screws us up. We adhere to our persona, which is often, but not always, but often a degradation because our persona is a fixation of the past and and an imagination of the future, but not really where we're inhabiting usually, normally. And I'm just as guilty of that as anyone, I suppose.
It's hard not to. I mean, think about it. We kind of have a nominative determinism in our society. You know,
Mm,
people who have names
perfect.
that are like their professions they find themselves in. There's a nominative
Mm,
determinism to everything. That's that
hmm.
self-perception, the
Right,
persona.
right. And, they say if you can name it, you can tame it, right? Well, if you go back to the tabernacle, let's say, let's go to the Judeo, the tabernacle. All right, you have the Shemaphoric, right? The 72 letter name of God, which is written forwards and backwards and forwards, right? Well, you also have that in the Gosha, right? There's 72 names there. And is that the shadow? Is it the same? Um, Ultimately, I think it's just the same because, as it says in the Gosha, and I've seen certain Hasidic things written that these things are manifest in the mind. It is the mind that manifests these things. These are the creations and the emanations of the thought form of the moment. And the tabernacle was lost, as they say. They no longer have it. Um, so the Shemaphorach was lost, I guess, but you're dealing with a 216 number, and that's pretty limited, I would say. What was lost is the meaning,
Well,
not the word,
I think
right?
there's a continuity between some of what you find in all of the Solomonic magic literature and the kind of architecture that you find in these, cathedrals, right? You find that
Mm, mm,
there's these
really?
big time numerical crossovers between the two, using the gematria of the demons and the measurements of the temple. And it's hard not to assume that there might be something to it. I mean, you got the idea of a demon as this worker, right? And if you don't have complete control
Functionary.
over it, right? If you don't have complete control over it, it'll overtake you. But the proper way to do it and the proper pronunciations and all the rest of the practices will give you a fully willing spirit. And in some ways, I think that's actually just a metaphor, because it
I
takes
agree.
the preparation of the mind. You have to be the vessel. You have to prepare the mind. You have to prepare the body. You have to have everything in perfect working order to get the best possible results.
Yep. I have spoken on this many times in the spaces that I share with Silver Crow. When I tell people, if this is the world you want to do, and this is your quest for answers and meaning, um, you are the scientist, you are the laboratory, and you are the experiment. The world is just the byproduct of it all. This is the point that you're in, and the understanding that you have. You're never going to be beyond your own reach, and you're never going to be beyond your own memory. Um, so the things that you do and say, like, okay, I'll give you one of the poems that I wrote. We spell each word. Each word a spell. Thought becomes heard through words we tell. Made understood through invention, and bad or good through intention. I mean, that's in a nutshell, that is our language. For me, that's how I define it, and that's how I comprehend it. So,
You just made the
you know,
Wiccan read way cooler. I mean, that's kind
and
of
that's
old
the
hat by now.
yeah, right. And that's that's something that I wanted to address too. And I know that my friend Silver Crow has addressed this many times, and I concur with him. Is that when people think of pagans, let's say that the pagan worship, oh, they worship Satan. Well, no, they don't, because in the pagan world, there is no Satan. Satan exists in the Christian world. That's a Christian concept. And that was kind of stolen away from the Gnostics, right? The Gnostics had Yaldabaoth, and they created that, and they adhered to that. And then when Irenaeus came about, and he started giving out heresies and orthodoxies, they kind of ascribed to this emissary, this you know opponent, because if you don't have an opponent, what do you have to fight for, right? And the Gnostics were saying, look, this world is an illusion, which is a pretty great concept to think of. They were already talking about the Matrix way the fuck back then, right? That was a Matrix, and this world's Matrix. And people were like, what the hell do you mean? I mean, I'm suffering now. And like, are you? Right? And Marcus Aurelius was already alive and dead by then. He said, uh, I I suffer when I say I'm harmed, when I say I'm harmed. If I'm not harmed, I'm learned. And if I'm learned, I've progressed. And if I've progressed, then I've grown. And if I've grown, I'm not harmed.
Matt, I don't know if you've heard about the story of how they invented depression in Japan. Did I tell you about that one?
No,
So Eli
no.
Lilly had all of this antidepressant that they were ready to ship over to Japan and get them into the whole new mode of the 90s 2000. Everybody gets prescribed these medications, but the problem is Japan didn't have a concept of depression. So Eli Lilly had to invent depression for Japan so that they could start writing these prescriptions for their drugs.
Mm.
And so what they did is they spent time getting to know the doctors, right? And they wanted the doctors to start prescribing this to celebrities so that they could have journalists write stories about those celebrities and how they have the sad flu. That's what they called it in Japan
I
because they didn't
remember
have the
that.
concept.
Right. The
They call
sad
it the sad
flu.
flu.
Right. Yeah. And really, all it was a wilted lily.
Man, so
That's,
if you want to talk about perception becoming a reality, there it is right there. And now they make $5 billion a year off the Japanese market selling
yeah.
these drugs that wouldn't have a disease to treat if not for their efforts. You want to talk about
Yep.
magic?
How about this? All right. You did ask me for some poetry, so I'll give you some. We look to the mirror to see ourselves clearer, to realize at last all we see is the past. It's the open eyes that's believing the lies and feeding the head that's already dead. What we are, we agree. So few choose to decree, I am that I am, and the rest is the glam. Shall I be dissident, claiming I'm different, or remain the same on the second place game? Or should that is me refuse to agree and shudder the eye to awaken the eye?
That was beautiful, Matt. I just like you. I'd like to thank you for your necromancy because clearly poetry is dead and you're raising it.
I'm a slave to cadence and rhyme scheme. And to be perfectly honest, dude, I got to tell you, um, I am a glorified stenographer mostly. You know, it doesn't take me very long to write these things because I just write down what I'm told, kind of. You know, I I don't really claim genius on this stuff. I just pay attention, I suppose. Um, you know, I will. I'll give you a couple more before I cut out. Let's see.
Oh,
This
while you're
one.
looking, I'm going to throw
Yeah.
up these pictures you sent me.
Oh, cool. Yeah. There you'll see. I have my fire wand, my chalice that I made by hand. I did that on a lathe. I made the dagger, which I made myself. I did the metallurgy. I did the fire wand on the lathe. I made the crystal healing wand. I made myself. I did the leather myself. The crystal sphere I actually bought. I did not make that, but these are some of the things I wrote. You could see my weathered ass old book of Magic and Theory and Practice there by Aleister Crowley. There's a book there called Summoning Spirits. There's my Kabbalistic, one of my Kabbalistic books. And then there's my LBRP, which I hand drew, and there's my grimoire opening page. So that's just to show that, you know, I actually have done stuff as opposed to just talk about it. But I don't really talk about stuff I've done. I only talk about my failures because that's more important. It's important. It's more important to I believe for me my I think it's more important for me to show people how I failed so they will not do the same failures as me than to extol my virtues so that they would emulate me in that way. Um, we're all singular little universes bumping around into each other all the time. That's why I like Giordano Bruno so well. I got my cosmology from him. I got the startup of my own philosophy from him. And I think that if someone would be really interested to see where the Catholic Church really got kicked in the crotch earlier on, Giordano Bruno was a good man to investigate with that.
Matt, you
I
should get that.
suggest.
You should get that
Yes.
published on Ricardo's page. He's got Institute for Natural Philosophy. I think that would work perfect. If you've got a theology based off of Giordano Bruno all written up, send it over to Ricardo, dude. He will publish that, and it would be big.
Okay. Well, sure. Well, yeah. I mean, to be honest, it's not varied very much. Maybe modernized a little bit, but I really do adhere to his, because I mean, if Einstein, and I believe this is something Einstein said, and I do believe this. I do adhere to this as a concept, and I think that it is true for me. He said, in an infinite universe, not only is anything possible, but it has likely already happened. And I think when those words hit my brain, instantly I had a visceral reaction to that. And it opened up a pathway for me to chase down and actualize past lives through the Edgar Cayce model. I did that through there. And I don't know if anyone out there has actually done some past life awakenings, but I can tell you that mine were generally unpleasant, very difficult, because my past life. My past life memories are of the time that I died. Uh, the quality and the pain and the suffering of the death. A lot of other people say, "Oh, I remember this," and yeah, no, I was stuck in the mud with a wound and died of thirst in 3 days in a suit of armor, and people robbed me. not not so glorious and wonderful, you know.
Happens to the best of us.
Not I was like, oh yeah, wow, that sounds really great for you. I wish I could share in your jovial celebration of your past life. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I want to go back. I don't think I want to remember anymore. But I'm certainly going to if I continue on this path. And the thing is, the more you do, the more you can. That's the one thing I want to say about magic is that, about 2 months ago, where I work, there was a hummingbird trapped in the building. Okay. And people were freaking out. They couldn't get him. And they called me. And I said, look, I'll get it. And they're like, what, you're going to just catch the hummingbird? I said, no, he's going to land in my hand. And they scoffed at me. They laughed. I thought it was ridiculous. I said, no, I'm going to hold out my hand. He's going to land in it. And they, normies, let's call them. Let's just say normies. They're like, yeah, sure, that's good. And I said, okay. And I walked in the building. They said, there's the hummingbird. We got to catch it. I said, what, are you going to get a box? The people getting boxes and things to throw? No, I'm going to let him land in my hand. I'm going to take him outside. And they were like, you can't do that. I'm like, no, that's what I'm doing. And I walked right up. I held out my hand. The hummingbird landed. Because what I told the hummingbird is, you're trapped here. And my heart wasn't racing. I wasn't excited. I was just nature. I made myself nature, and nature that it would adhere to, right? And it wasn't to prove anything. It was to help the fucking hummingbird, right? That's what it was
Right.
for. It wasn't to prove anything. And everybody just, when I turned around and the hummingbird landed in my hand, and there it was. I have pictures of that. I could put it up on your page later, whatever. But there it is. It's just sitting in my hand exactly as I said it would. And they were like, they were incredulous to it. And I said, look, this is what magic is. And those are the words I use. This is magic. You know, it's not to extract from nature, it's to coexist with it. It's to make yourself as perfectly as you can to be in nature, because this is the reason that I comprehend magic is to relearn nature's language that we have forgotten through our modernity.
Matt, one of the reasons why
That's
I
what
love
I
you
call
so much is because your earth door is still wide open and you're just
it.
fully engaged with nature. That's one of the things I love about your poetry, and also, these experiences. Like, you're still right there. You're present in the moment, and that's so important to understand the earth and
I
the
try.
nature of things around us.
Yeah, I that's my attempt. I'm not always great at that, but it's also important to speak of your failures. It's also to say that I don't know. You know, it's important to say you do not know what you do not know. Uh, that's where true wisdom lies. Because if you say that you don't know, someone who does know can tell you. Or the Logos can open up to you and say, well, if you want to be a vessel for knowledge, here it is. Because as my relationship with information is that it wants to inhabit and it wants to disseminate. It doesn't care if you even comprehend it or not. It's not like beauty. Beauty wants to be recognized. It wants to be extolled its virtue is to be celebrated. Information does not have that. It's almost like a virus. It just wants to inhabit and it wants to propagate. And it doesn't care if you even comprehend it or not. It treads on us or it flows through us. We could be a perfect vessel for it or just a treadstone. It doesn't even care. It doesn't care. Once it comes out the ether, the Logos finds like electricity or water, the path of least resistance. And it says that is the way through. And I don't even care if I cause chaos, destruction, or whatever. I'm just going out, I'm emanating. And it's us that gives it the value, right?
It's like
We find
neutrinos.
them.
Neutrinos
Like
pass
a
all the way through
neutrino.
the earth.
And hit or miss.
Right. Sometimes it lights up in the pool with the heavy water. Sometimes it just goes right through.
Perfect. All right, let me dig something up for you here real quick, and then I'll let you go. I know I've talked your ear off here, but
Oh, I love it, Matt. I could do this all night.
really, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was kind of I thought it. You get some pretty amazing people in here. I How about this one? This one's a bit long-winded,
Let us
but
have it.
I got a couple of them. Here we go. So often, this is kind of autobiographical about how sometimes when things come to me and I just write them down, I'm kind of just a stenographer. So this speaks to that. So often, when the mood takes hold to whisper in my lofted ear, you now must do as you are told, and with this scheme you will adhere. So here I sit while come the lines, and well I know will not abate, and seem to have their own designs to will themselves in cadence 8. Without an inkling to resist, I do the bidding of the muse, and on she goads me to persist. She knows my ego can't refuse. The Logos is the master, though. She does its bidding, as do I. Do either of us really know what words will stop or pass us by? Is what's within and what's without a product of my will at all? With all I know and all I doubt, I only write what I recall.
I love it. I love it. We got to get you on the
All right.
occult rejects. This has been awesome. Thanks everybody for joining us. I hope to see Matt again. I know everybody appreciated it. Do you see the comments?
I hope
They're
so.
loving it.
No, no, I don't read that stuff. Sorry. I'm just, I,
Sometimes you got to stop and read the comments.
right. Well, I promise I will, because if people are putting energy into it, I need to respect it. Okay, and I will, thank you personally. If you're giving me your energy, I certainly will reciprocate. Okay, I promise that.
Well, this has been another Headless Giant episode with my buddy Matt Onstad. Check him out. His Twitter handle is hard to remember. Let me see if I can throw it up here real quick. What's your Twitter handle? Let me see.
And troglodyte one.
M Troglodyte 1.
And troglodyte. It's the scientific name of a chimpanzee, because I'm 0.2% of standing still and being an animal.
All right, so that's Pan Troglodyte 1. So look him up. You'll love his poetry. He's a great follow. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight, and we'll see you again next time.
Thanks, brother. I really appreciate